The morning air shattered under a single gunshot that echoed through our cul-de-sac like a war drum announcing invasion even before the scent of coffee had fully awakened the neighborhood. And in that instant my life splintered into before and after. Before, my wife Elena was leaning over our grandfather's wheelchair with that gentle smile she reserved for his soft jokes. After, she crumpled to the driveway in a pool of bright red that seared itself into my vision for eternity. My heart stopped, then pounded with the primal force of a battle cry. I sprinted across the lawn, muscles honed through years leading high-risk entries, and tore the gun from Karen's trembling hand. Her eyes, bulging with disbelief, pleaded for mercy as I shoved her against the hood of her own car, my uniform creaking with the weight of every command I'd ever issued. Grandpa wheezed in shock, blood trickling from his shaking lips, and Elena lay so still I wondered if the world had frozen around her. But I was no ordinary neighbor. I was the SWAT team commander for this entire region, trained to see the fault lines in chaos, to restore order where panic reigned. And order demanded answers. The truth clawed to the surface in the hours that followed as I cuffed Karen on charges of attempted murder, elder abuse, and weapons violations, 3 felonies that would bury her entitlement deeper than any HOA fine ever could. Under the harsh glare of fluorescent lights at the precinct, she stammered about jealousy, about how she'd heard rumors that Elena and Grandpa planned to sell their house to an out-of-state developer, about how the neighborhood's pristine image had been threatened by our shady history. But every accusation fell apart when I produced security camera footage from my own home's doorbell cam footage showing Karen pacing our walkway with a scowl, pistol at hip, eyes darting as though hunting prey. Then came the eyewitness testimony of 3 neighbors who'd watched her rev her engine and step out, gun raised before the shot rang. The shock on Karen's face as she realized her masquerade was over was the closest thing I'd ever seen to true terror. At the emergency room, I abandoned my badge and uniform to cradle Elena's hand, feeling Grandpa's frail grip on my arm as they wheeled her into surgery. The sterile beeping of machines became a drumbeat fueling my fury. Each beep a reminder of the life she'd led, the vows we'd taken, the future ripped away by someone who felt above consequence. While surgeons battled to save her, I organized my team for a full investigation of the HOA board because Karen had allies on that council too, silent partners in her campaign of cruelty. I traced their emails, uncovered secret meetings, and found the hidden clause in our bylaws that Karen used to justify her threats. She'd stockpiled gunpowder in the maintenance shed, filed false safety complaints against families she disliked, and manipulated votes with forged signatures. This wasn't a lone incident, it was a carefully orchestrated reign of terror. By evening, Elena was in stable condition, resilient as ever, her eyes opening to meet mine with that fierce spark I fell in love with. Grandpa, bandaged but stoic, squeezed my shoulder and whispered, "You've always stood up for justice, son." In that hospital corridor, I realized our battle had only just begun. I convened a press conference in scrubs and sweatpants, standing between Elena's bed and the flashing bulbs of local media, to announce the removal of every implicated board member and my intention to prosecute them all to the fullest extent of the law. The chatter of reporters swelled as I spoke of community betrayal, of the need to hold power to account, and of my wife's courage in fighting through the night, painting a picture more shocking than any HOA scandal the county had ever seen. But then came the twist nobody expected. As we dug into Karen's background, we uncovered her ties to a shadowy investors group, aiming to displace longtime residents and flip our neighborhood into luxury condos. The shooting had been her gambit to seize control of our land by fear, an act of economic terrorism, disguised as petty HOA enforcement. When that revelation broke, the story exploded across state lines, drawing FBI interest, and that's when I activated the counterstrike I'd been planning in every spare moment. A joint federal-local task force to indict not just Karen and her board, but the entire conspiracy lurking behind them. It was a moment of vindication that felt as sweet as a bullet to an enemy, but engineered with the precision of a SWAT breach. Now, standing at our rebuilt front porch weeks later, Elena leaning on me with a scarred but triumphant smile, and Grandpa's laughter echoing down the street as children played under our restored oak, I felt the weight of our victory settle like armor. Justice had been served not with vengeance, but with strategic force and unwavering resolve. And our little cul-de-sac had been reborn from the ashes of fear into a fortress of solidarity. But the final reckoning belongs to you. Was this ultimate takedown a necessary act of protection, or did I cross a line even I can't revisit? Share your verdict below. In the weeks that followed the explosive revelations, our cul-de-sac seemed to hum with a cautious optimism born of hard lessons learned. The rebuilt facade of Maplewood Drive glistened under fresh paint. But it was the unspoken shifts in daily life that marked our true transformation. Each morning, I watched as neighbors greeted one another not with nervous glances but with nods of genuine concern, checking in on Elena's recovery, offering to wheel Grandpa to his favorite park bench, bringing casseroles and fresh flowers without a hint of hesitation. I found myself standing in the shadow of that old oak tree, cradling my daughter in her stroller as she clutched a plush firefighter bear, a gift from our SWAT unit colleagues who'd rallied around our family in solidarity, and I realized that our collective heartbeat had steadied into something stronger than fear. Legally, the road ahead was winding. Karen's co-conspirators on the HOA board fought back with procedural motions and appeals designed to delay justice, hoping to bury the evidence under a mountain of legalese. But each motion was met with our meticulously documented case files, the doorbell cam footage, the recorded threats, and the financial records exposing the condo conversion plot. When our lead prosecutor stood before the grand jury and laid out the conspiracy with the precision of a tactical plan, the panel needed no persuasion. Indictments for conspiracy to commit violent assault, racketeering, and attempted economic coercion were handed down in droves. I watched from the gallery as the defendants' faces drained of color, Karen's once-taut smirk replaced by the slack jaw of disbelief, her allies' eyes flicking nervously between one another as the weight of their schemes crashed around them. Back at home, Elena's scars had begun to fade into elegant silver lines across her abdomen, a testament to her survival and tenacity. Grandpa, ever the stubborn old soldier, insisted on leading our weekly strategy meetings for the neighborhood's new safety committee, waving a gavel he'd fashioned from a wooden mallet and declaring, "No more silent agreements or backroom deals, we face problems head-on, just like my grandson taught me." His humor lit a spark in each of us, and slowly we redefined what it meant to be an HOA home of authenticity. We drafted bylaws requiring transparency in all board communications, instituted mandatory conflict resolution workshops, and set up an annual Community Courage award to honor any resident who spoke up against bullying or abuse. At our first awards ceremony, held under string lights in my own backyard, Elena presented the inaugural trophy to Mrs. Patel, acknowledging her for breaking the silence when she overheard Karen's first threats. The applause that followed was more thunderous than any courtroom verdict. Yet justice is a living force, not a final prize. When Karen and her cadre finally faced trial in the high-ceilinged county courthouse, the atmosphere was electric. News crews lined the hallways, their microphones sniffing for soundbites as jurors filed in under stern instructions to ignore the media frenzy. I sat next to Elena and Grandpa at the defense table, cloaked in civilian clothes to underscore that this was a community affair, not another law enforcement operation. As testimonies unfolded, details emerged that chilled even our seasoned prosecutors. Karen had bribed a maintenance worker to tamper with brake lines on a neighbor's car, staged a fake burglary to drum up calls for tighter surveillance, and coached a minor into lying about seeing suspicious activity in our yard. Each revelation felt like another betrayal, a fresh wound reopening old fears. But it also steeled our resolve, proof that the tentacles of entitlement had stretched far beyond a single shooting, ensnaring anyone who refused to bow to Karen's will. On the witness stand, Elena spoke with a quiet strength that resonated through the courtroom. She described the sound of that single shot, how it silenced her laughter and awakened a fierce protectiveness she never knew she possessed. She testified to the sleepless nights spent clutching painkillers as she grappled with nightmares of Karen's face, the way her finger curled on the trigger. And she spoke of her love for this community, how she refused to let one act of violence define our future. When she finished, the silence in the chamber was so thick you could almost taste it, then it broke into applause from the public gallery, a spontaneous standing ovation that left me blinking back tears. The jury deliberated only 3 hours before returning a verdict of guilty on all counts. The relief that washed over me was matched by a sobering awareness of the road ahead. Sentencing would come later, and appeals would follow, but the scales had finally tipped toward justice. Outside the courthouse, the media circus transformed into heartfelt coverage of our community's resilience, spotlighting the reforms we'd enacted and the unity we'd forged. National outlets picked up the story, framing Maplewood Drive as a cautionary tale and an inspiring blueprint for neighborhoods everywhere. I even received letters from families in distant states, asking for copies of our safety committee bylaws and invitations to speak at HOA conferences. In those moments, I knew our struggle had resonated far beyond our shaded streets. Through it all, life at home returned to a peaceful rhythm. Early morning coffee on the porch became our ritual, Elena smiling as she sipped while Grandpa dozed in his recliner beside her. Cassie, now toddling with newfound confidence, chased squirrels across the lawn, her laughter weaving through the trees like a promise of brighter days. I watched from the sidelines, uniform hanging untouched in the closet, feeling the weight of command replaced by something more personal, the quiet fulfillment of a parent who'd faced down his greatest fears to protect his family. The oak tree, once a silent witness to our darkest hour, now stood as a guardian of renewal, a living symbol of endurance and growth. As autumn painted the leaves in fiery hues, we hosted our first Maplewood Harvest Festival, complete with pumpkin carving, cider presses, and a storytelling circle where neighbors recounted tales of courage from the past year. When it was my turn to speak, I told them about the power of unity, how a single act of stand-up defiance can ripple outward to topple tyranny, whether wielded by a gun or hidden behind HOA bylaws. I ended with a challenge. Let us not wait for crisis to reveal our strength. Let us choose compassion every day, speak truth without fear, and extend our hand before we need it to be extended back. Now, as winter's first frost kisses the grass, I carry with me the knowledge that entitlement and cruelty can never fully extinguish the human spirit when a community stands together. Karen's sentencing looms in the new year, but whatever her fate, her reign of terror has already been dismantled by our collective resolve. Every time I glance at the wooden plank hanging on our fence, now repurposed as a welcome sign reading "Unity over Entitlement," I'm reminded that justice is not merely punishment, but the restoration of dignity and trust. So I ask you, in your own neighborhood or life, where might you plant a seed of courage to challenge wrongdoing before it takes root? Share your experiences and inspire others to stand firm.